I have with me today Dr. Dave Haskell, class of 1967. Dave, thanks for joining me.
The road to a friend's house is never very long. Good to be here.
Super. Well, let's start off. Tell me about your background. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in East Troy, Wisconsin. East Troy, Wisconsin is about 35 miles west of where we're sitting right now. And my grandpa was a general practitioner, and the only general practitioner in Walworth County. And we moved back to Milwaukee when I was about 9 years old, but we spent most of our summers in a place called Sun Valley, Idaho. My dad's grandpa had a ranch out there, and as a youth we went out there during the summers. We drove out in a 1947 Buick Roadmaster through South Dakota, through the Badlands, and we would never stop. We keep right on going. We had water bags in the front of the car, one for drinking and the other to cool the engine. And we spent our summers there, and I learned how to ride a horse and still hold a hexagon barreled .22 and shoot the old insulator wires off the telegraph poles.
There you go.
My grandpa took me fishing for we had smallmouth bass up there. We had rainbow trout, speckled trout, brown trout on the Wood River, which stayed about 50 degrees winter and summer. Was a thermal river.
Neat.
And then I came back home. I went to school at Marquette University High School, and I was flogged by the Jesuits for some 4 years. And I went to Marquette University and the med school, and here we are.
You bet.
Yeah.
And yes, you might have answered this question when you mentioned your grandpa being the only general practitioner in Walworth County.
Yeah.
But when in your life did you realize, I want to be a doctor?
That's a long story. I'll give that to you later.
No, go ahead.
Well, it begins in high school. At Marquette University High School, the senior advisors to the senior class were well into their 80s. They're Jesuits. I never met my senior advisor. It was in January of my senior year. And we sat down, and he said, "You're Dave Haskell?" And I said, "I am, Father." He said, "Are you going to go to college?" I said, "Well, I've made application to 6 universities. I've been accepted to 6 universities." He said, "That's good. What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." He looked at his folder. He said, "You're good at math. I'm 17 years old now. You should be an engineer." Engineer I was. At the chagrin of my parents, who went to University of Wisconsin, Madison, chose Marquette University because all my pals were going there. I was working during the summer at Globe Tube and Steel, also known as Inland Iron, working third shift on a factory line, and I was using a micrometer to measure the thickness of steel. And I was going to make about $9,000 that summer.
Wow.
August 1st, at my home, I received a letter saying, "You're commanded to be here on August 1st or August 6th for football. Football starts." Now, during the course of my application to Marquette University, I intimated that I was interested in football. So they presumed I was going to go out for the football team. And I did. And I was a blocking dummy for the next 10 weeks. I was never given a uniform. I had to share a locker with 2 other fellows who were also walk-ons. And again, was 17 years old. I met the meanest man I ever met in my life. His name was Lyle Blackburn.
Oh, yeah.
Lyle Blackburn went on to teach football at the University of Hard Knocks in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was a Green Bay coach for about a year, and then they left him. Well, after being the blocking dummy for 10 weeks, they never gave me a uniform, but I did go to one game, the University of Wisconsin game in Madison. They gave me a helmet and a costume, but I never played in a game. So now we're about mid-January, and my enthusiasm for engineering, because I became a doubly engineer, paled. So I consulted my dad, and I said, "Dad, I don't like this engineering." He tapped me on the chest. He said, "Why don't you go to med school?" And there I went.
Okay.
That was it.
That's great.
Long story, but
No, it's a good story. I mean, it's actually one of the more fun questions I've asked people.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it goes everywhere from when I was 5 or 6 years old to my grandfather was a doctor and I wanted to be a doctor to a story like this. It's great.
I never took care of rabbits or birds with broken wings.
Yeah.
Oh.
Your dad said, "Hey, how about medical school?"
Right.
That's great. The You pretty much gave me your story about why you went to Marquette University, then Marquette University School of Medicine. What did you apply to other medical schools?
I did not apply to any other medical schools. I did apply to 6 universities for undergraduate work and got accepted all, and I got rides to all of them. I got a ride to Marquette University. I got a ride to Marquette University Medical School, which was
great.
kind. It's a full scholarship,
Well,
unsolicited.
it's the special group, the 3 Mers.
There we are.
Marquette High School, University.
Right up and down Wisconsin Avenue. Yeah.
That's right. Didn't have to go very far.
Oh.
While at Marquette University School of Medicine, any memorable professors that you think back and you go, wow, or think back and go, what a horse's patoot?
Well, we had a lot of senior volunteers at the Medical College of Wisconsin when we were freshmen. That's down on 15th Street. We were the last class in that building.
That's going to be another question that I'm going to ask.
And then it moved out to the county grounds where we are right now. But we remembered Walter Zeit, after whom the contributing features of the Zeit Fellowship was named. Walter Zeit was a chairman of anatomy, and he chaired anatomy for about 40 years. And he was a quizzical fellow. He was somewhat inscrutable, didn't say much, but would come around our cadaver tables and ask us questions, intimidating questions. And he would seem to write something down and make a note of what we wrote down, so we never know what was going to happen with that information. And our very first lecture we had in anatomy was by Hiram T. Benjamin. Hiram T. Benjamin was a semi-retired general surgeon who volunteered for anatomy. And the first lecture we had was about the thoracic artery and its distribution. And we dutifully wrote down everything he said. Yes.
Everyone remembers their partners around the cadaver table.
Sure.
What was your group?
Well, there were Horkheimer, Haskell, Hall, and Haushalter.
Okay.
Everybody with H.
And I only know you.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of members of your class. So
One of our pals passed on, but there are 5 of us still alive. Our
that's
exam
great.
table, yeah.
That's great. That's it's certainly the anatomy group. That's a big part of medical school.
We were all anatomically reassigned,
Yeah, really. Well, the other thing is, I know there wasn't air conditioning back then.
No,
either,
it was
so.
not. We had the windows open.
Right. Hey, I got to ask you a question. I haven't asked this of anybody. I've seen pictures of Walter Zeit. Was Walter Zeit a fairly tall guy, or not? Looks always thin.
He was probably 6'2".
Okay, so he's
during
fairly
his
tall.
peak years.
Okay.
But I think he's diminished down to about 5'10", 5'11".
Okay.
He had a round back deformity,
Okay.
a kyphus. He's an affable guy. He's always smiling.
I know he played cards with people.
Yeah, he did.
I know that. So.
And his lecture, his specialty was the pelvis.
Okay.
And he gave a lecture on the pelvis for 2 days. I remember that well.
Wow. Well, that's good. That's good information.
Yeah.
That's stuff. I mean, every interview we hear stuff that we didn't hear before. You finished up, and when in your medical school years did you get the bug to go into orthopedic surgery?
Well, back in the days of 1963 through 67, when we were a junior, the 3rd year, that would be 66, we migrated through surgical subspecialties, urology, pediatrics, general surgery. And you could allocate your special interest. And we were normally allowed 2 weeks for each specialty, and then we'd move on to the next one. So I chose orthopedics for 2 weeks. And during the course of my exposure to the orthopedic surgeons that were there, the residents, they were senior residents at the time, they were 7 or 8 years my senior, I met 4 of the nicest guys you could ever shake a stick at. It was Bill Schneider.
He's been in your chair?
Been in my chair.
Good friend.
He's up in Green Bay right now, and he made a contribution to the new medical school in Green
Did
Bay.
he? I was the guy he called to say he wanted to make it.
Oh, okay.
What a wonderful thing
great
he
guy.
did. He sure did a great job.
He most impressed me as one of the nicest guys I've ever met in that business. Jason Litton, who lived in Pennsylvania. Tom Howard was there at the time. These are some of the fellows that I found to be ingratiating, affable, always smiling, and they let me do anything I wanted to do in the business as long as I did it within reason.
Right.
We played golf together. We'd drink beer together. So I asked for an additional 2 weeks. And I was granted 2 weeks at the expense of some other rotation.
Yeah.
And after the end of the 4 weeks, I was invited to meet Walter P. Blount, who volunteered to be the chief of the Department of Orthopedic Surgery under the subsection of surgery. It was really not a department, it was a section. And he interviewed me, and he said, I'd like to have you be my resident in 3 years. Somewhat unheard of at that time. I said, Dr. Blount, I've already committed myself to be a straight surgical intern. That was under the surgical chief at the time. I forgot his name.
Ellison? Was that Ellison?
Edward Ellison, yeah, Edward Ellison. And Edward Ellison also ran our AOA program. We used to go to his home and stay until 3 o'clock in the morning and find our way home.
And you were AOA?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's how I met Ed Ellison. So I said, I don't think there'll be a conflict, but we'll do the best we can. And sure enough, I went into orthopedics.
Okay.
And I never turned around and regretted the moment.
Well, and you're still practicing,
Yes.
which is super. And you mentioned, Schneider and the other guys. You mentioned Walter Blount.
Yeah.
During your residency years, any other mentors that you can think of? They were typically local surgeons.
They were all volunteers.
Right.
I think towards the end of my senior year, we had one fellow who accepted a stipend, who actually sat at the desk 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
But everybody else was a volunteer. We went to 4 or 5 hospitals around the city, including the VA hospital, where I spent 43 years teaching the residents. Yeah, the halcyon days.
Well, and I'm going to just divert back just a hair to 1967 before I go on to the other questions, and that is, you graduated in 1967. By the fall, it's no longer, the medical school's not part of Marquette. They're there, but 3 years Marquette Marquette School of Medicine, and then Medical College of Wisconsin. I mean, you're right there in the front lines, and also know so many people. What were your thoughts at that time when this was going on?
I'm a traditionalist. A name change was never really appealing to me, but we understood why they had to do it. The affiliation with Marquette University Medical School and Marquette University and the religious connotation with the Jesuits would not sit well if you're asking funds from the state for support of the medical school. The medical school became too expensive for the Marquette University. So I can understand the rationale why we had to change the name. I notice now we're going to maybe change the name again.
Who knows? It is one of the fun things about getting to stay around with my part-time job, other than sitting with my friends like this, is to see all the great things going on.
Yeah.
And it's pretty darn exciting to be around.
There's strength and flexibility, right?
Really there is. There really is. Where did you, and I mean, again, some of the things I'm asking you because we've spent time together, but I don't know, where did you begin your career after you finished your residency in orthopedic surgery?
Well, I joined a group of 2 fellows named Bill McDevitt and Bob McCabe.
You've been there ever since.
We've been there ever since. Bob McCabe passed on after retiring. He passed on about 5 years ago. Bill McDevitt retired about 15 years ago. But I still see him every week. He stops by the office to say hello. And I'm affiliated now with a group of 14 fellas.
Yeah.
So it's a great life. And I enjoy working. I truly need a job.
Yeah.
I don't need money, but I need a job.
No,
Yeah.
I have to tell you,
You can't play golf 6 days a week or 7
I know,
days a
and
week.
I can't fish 7 days a week, and especially in the winter.
Yeah.
So no,
We
that's
enjoy
great.
work. We're still active. I just did 5 cases this morning.
Oh, that's super.
Yeah.
No, that's super. Your career has, a lot of highlights. I mean, you were the team doc of the Milwaukee Bucks.
That's correct.
And how long were you the team doc with the Bucks?
1973 to 2002, 29
Wow.
years. 29 years.
I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah. It was longer towards the end than it was in the beginning. The Bucks were a real hobby. If you recall, the Milwaukee Bucks were a franchise expansion team in 1968. So every team had to give up a a third of their team exposed to a draft by the incoming new team. In 1969, we had the first round of the draft, and a fellow named Lou Alcindor was our first choice. It was a flip of the coin because somebody else had the same choice. And Lou Alcindor came to town in 1969. And the national championship followed 2 years later, and we have not had a national championship since that time. And those were the days when the Bucks were a small team, a small economic feature. The original investors was Wesley Pavilon. Wesley Pavilon was an entrepreneur, and he invested with several other investors for about $3 million that took the team. About 5 years later, Bill Blake and Jim Fitzgerald invested. And it was a public franchise that time, and they took it private for $8 million. That was circa 1977 or so. In 1987, another man bought this team, and this is now for $17 million. And after 30 years later, he sold it for $550 million.
Good investment.
I think it was. Didn't know it at the time, but it went from a hobby team to actually an industry. The original players that were there were prior to the expansion that we had with exercising the clause, the free agency clause, which is invented an obeisance to egalitarianism gone awry. They never should have done that, in my opinion. So when you sign up a player that came out of the draft, he would be your player for the next 10 years, unless he got injured or you traded him for some other reason, some other capacity. Now with the free agency, they're here for 2 years, 3 years. I can't even tell you who the ball players are now.
I know.
You know, they come and they go, and they get injured and they moved on. So the joy of the Milwaukee Bucks was heightened during those years. It was large enough to accommodate you, but small enough to appreciate you. You know, everybody knew everybody. And my friends that I met 29 years ago, John McLaughlin, Eddie Doucette, with whom I'm both having dinner with tonight. The boys that played, the Sidney Moncriefs, I'm trying to think of some of the fellows over there you still know. But Sidney was there for almost 11 years.
Yeah.
Junior Bridgman,
Yeah.
one of the brightest, nicest guys we had. Yeah.
That had been an exciting part of your
It was a
career.
great time.
Did you I mean, as unlike our friend Pat McKenzie, who's on the sidelines all the time,
Yeah.
you didn't have to go to all the games. I'm sure you went to many.
I wish you were correct.
Did you go to?
We had to go to 42 games a year. And when I was not available, my partners would go, or I'd have to assign somebody to go. And there was a league rule at the time, before airplanes were privatized. The players had to go to a hotel, and they'd fly to the next city in the morning on a commercial airline. And so we were there as an accommodation for the visiting team, so they had access to a dock before they jumped off to the
So
next
I was
city.
going to ask you that answers that question. So
Right.
you worked when home games?
Right,
You
home
were
games.
you were working both.
We'd only went to when the playoffs came around, which was frequent in the beginning.
Yeah.
Then we had a dearth of playoffs for about 10 years. We'd have to go to the playoff games also to eliminate the conflict that might exist and the surgeon who was taking care of the visiting team to put a guy down. Which brings me to a story.
You got me laughing on that one.
You know, we won in 1971. In 1956 through about 1975, a team called Boston won 15 national championships. They had a coach named Red Auerbach. They had a little guy from Indiana there, too, who could shoot guards. They had Bill Russell as their center.
Yeah, Bill was great.
And they kept winning games. Well, in 1983, we won our first round of our playoffs, and we had Boston down to 3 games, and we went to Boston It was the last week of May, and it was 96 degrees inside and outside. There was no air conditioning. We played on the floor that was buckled, particularly with the heat. It would sag up and down. It was a mosaic floor.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost 2 players towards the end of that game for injuries. And Junior Bridgman was taken into the showers because he had a heat stroke.
Mm.
So we only had 12 guys on the team. We were down to 9. And we won that game, the 4th game. Now, Red Auerbach was noted for his unprincipled technique of lighting up a cigar in a playoff game when he knew they were close to winning. And in this case, Jim Fitzgerald sat behind the bench, lit up about a 7-inch cigar, and smoked it right down to the rim. You could smell it all the way over to the North Church. There's no smoking in the arena.
Yeah, jeez.
And I don't think the 2 of them ever spoke after
Wow.
that. Yeah.
That's a good story.
Great time, yeah.
I'm
Great
sure you
time.
have a.
We lost the next series to a team called Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago always seemed to win after
Yeah,
that.
they had some good players, that's for sure. You had mentioned a few questions back. You mentioned about at the VA doing some teaching. Yeah, you are still on our clinical faculty.
I am.
So from literally almost day one. So you're looking at
43 years. Yeah,
43 years on the faculty. Has that been a fun part of your career, taking those residents and working with them?
Well, you have a true joy. It was good for the residents, and it was great for us. You always had to stay 6 pages ahead of the residents. You had to stay hot. And the evolution of medicine, particularly orthopedic medicine, with its implementation of tools and toys that we use, things change quickly, and time has changed quickly. And we always want to be right on top of it. And we were over there with Mike Colopy. Mm-hmm. Mike Colopy ran the program. J.O.D. McCabe. Mike Colopy's dad was over there. We had Bill McDevitt was there. And then as people moved on and moved out, we had about 30 different fellows at work, what we call the Meet Conference. Mm-hmm. The Meet Conference was on a Thursday morning at 7 o'clock. And the residents would bring in the cases they'd seen over the past week for whom they thought surgery was appropriate or necessary. And we would debrief them and put the gun to their head and have them explain why. Did you explain to the patient the complications, the expectations, and the alternatives? And it was referred to as the Meet Conference. I think it was the most valued portion of the orthopedic program because we pretty much gave license to the senior residents to do what they wanted to do, and they did it themselves. We would staff a case. After the Meet Conference on Thursday, about 9 o'clock, for 19 years, I would go to the operating room with our senior residents and junior residents, and we let them do the case. We were there if something hit the fan, but we were there, and they were there.
And is your group still taking residents, working with residents?
Not in the last several years, no.
Okay.
And the residents used to come to our office.
Yeah.
It was a great show.
One of the things that, through my time running the Alumni Association, 21 years, that was very obvious to me is that your influence, and we'll talk a little bit about within orthopedic surgery, but it seems like, and even sitting here, be honest with you, there have been quite a few that your name has come up, and always positively, to be honest with you, and over my time doing this, always positively. So you obviously have created a lot of friendships outside of orthopedic surgery with alumni and other community physicians in Southeast Wisconsin. It seems like it's something, I mean, you're good at it, but it seems like it's something you've really enjoyed.
Well, I try to keep it a secret, but I love people. Mm-hmm. I meet 3,000 new people every year in my office. We're out for dinner 6 nights a week. The only dinner I stay home is the night before I cut in surgery.
Yeah.
I remember 3 golf clubs. I like to fly fish with people.
Wait, okay, Blue Mound?
Blue Mound,
Chiniqua,
and Desert Mountain, which is in Arizona.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes,
right.
Beautiful down there.
And we meet a lot of people in Wisconsin, down in Arizona.
That area
I love people. I love to shake and smile with them. I'm in other industries. I'm in my real estate business, passively. We know a lot of people in that industry, a lot of contractors. Life is a joint, as we say.
Well, you're a positive person that it's tough not to have it
It was fun for me.
rub off.
Yeah.
Well, you're one of those guys that I often say that I pay extra close attention to because I may pick up a tidbit that I don't want to miss.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and like I said, I met you back in probably the early '80s, so probably '82 or '83, just briefly. I mean, I don't even think you just looked at my X-rays and said, yeah, you're doing okay with that medial meniscus or whatever.
But I remember that you're a rated racquetball player for the previous 5 years at the time. Not only did you fish, but you took everybody down the plate.
Then, but when you saw me, that was sort of at my beginning of of a lot of. I think I won my first state championship in '82.
Yeah.
So you saw me when the medial meniscus wasn't causing me a trouble.
Right.
The last 2 years, it is starting to cause me a little trouble, but.
The halcyon days.
I'm waiting for the injection, and Don Hackbarth said, "Don't hold your breath."
Don't wait.
Yeah, right. So, but one of the things that when I first got to know you, and you and I have joked about this, that you went from how you used to run the wonderful alumni reception back in the day to where it's more lean and mean now. But that's something you've done. When did you start doing that reception for the alumni tied in with the AAOS meeting?
1972.
Oh, geez. Okay. So
That was the year we finished.
Yep.
We would oftentimes get together from time to time at the academy meetings, but we never had a formal reunion. And I noticed that in the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons information book we got every year at the meeting, that there were several people that would meet. So I said, we will meet. And we put our name in the book, and we had a meeting place, and we always met on Fridays. And we've done it now for 45 years.
And
I've only missed 2.
I know, I was going to say, I know you missed one, I think, during my tenure.
Yeah.
And
I was in the Caribbean sailing at that time.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's the neat thing about that meeting, again, and that's where I think was one of the arguments where we were able to get the cost down. Still remember the very first one I went to. Mike Bolger and I had been in Florida, and you're in Atlanta, and you're at the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta. And Mike and our plane was late. So we first stopped at the hotel, and there was a chef with the hat, and it was like, look at this is great. And I think nowadays it's, a few hors d'oeuvres and some peanuts. But the one thing that I've observed over the years, the group, it was always a good group, anywhere from 70 to 100 plus people.
Well, let me take issue with your few hors d'oeuvres and peanuts. We now,
Has it gone back to the good days?
It's gone back to the good days.
Good.
The ticket is usually about $5,500 to $7,000, but we make a contribution to that too as part of our alumni association.
And you know something, I have to say that, and I didn't, as I was doing this, that's something I should have made note of, but I have to tell you, I still remember a year that it was going to be in Las Vegas, and you wanted to go to a certain location.
Right.
And thank God we knew each other well, because I let you know that might be out of our price range. So I was all ready to give you 3 options. None of them would have been good with you.
Yeah.
But you said, no, I want to go to the Bellagio, and you said, I will help with a contribution.
Yeah.
And you've done that a number of times.
Every year since then.
And it really, I remember seeing Siegfried and Roy go by and other people, but that has really been nice because that allowed to get this back to being,
I think many of our fellow alumni members look forward to the meeting every year. We really do.
And I was going to say, they tend, compared to other ones that I've been to, your group tends to show up on time.
Yes.
And stay the whole
2 hours.
2 hours.
Right.
And there's just a lot of talking. It's just a really pleasant group. And I think that this isn't official or anything, but my observation, and certainly orthopedic surgeons do well, but the support from the orthopedic surgery alumni is very, very good. And my sense is that the reception has been a plus.
We're a loving group.
You're you, definitely a loving group. Now, I have to ask you about something, how it started, because I learned about it at one of these receptions, and that was basically someone talked about, or maybe Mike Bolger told me about it, the Haskell Challenge, where I understood that you simply gave the senior resident students your credit card, and each year you challenged them to outdo the previous year. Tell me about when it started and the truth about it.
Well, it started when I was a senior resident. We went to Washington, D.C., and I was joined one night at their invitation with Walter Blount and his new associate at the time, Bob Ziggy. And they took me and several of our colleagues to the Jockey Club. And we were very well cared for, and I thought it would be a nice tradition if I did that same thing. So the next year, after we got out, I took the senior residents, and the initial few years, I would generally accompany them.
Yeah.
Then the residents brought their wives, and then we started to have fellows, so it got bigger and bigger. So we sent them out on their own, and yes, we would give them a card. And we gave them some counseling. A lot of the young Turks didn't know really how to go to a restaurant and get it done correctly. So I said, I want you to call that restaurant, speak to the maitre d', and I want you to get to that maitre d' before you sit down, and to ensure prompt service tip, give him your gratuity ahead of time. So you'll be well cared for. Make sure you get a round table so you can all speak to each other at the same time, because there were 8, 10, sometimes 12 people there. And I want you to order some good wines, not the most expensive wine, but some good wines, and I want you to speak to the sommelier. And they did. And I said, I don't care what it costs. Sometimes you can order from the right to the left, but generally order from the left to the right. Stay away from the numbers. Then one year, in Las Vegas, my colleagues, my junior colleagues were overserved at their dinner. And a hostess came around with a camera and charged them $2,000 to take their pictures. So I ran the bill up to about $6,900. And that's where the misnomer of the Haskell Challenge took its roots, trying to outdo the previous year. And I said, we've got to lower the bar a little bit.
Right.
You know.
Don't need the pictures.
No, but it's still a challenge.
Well, it's a neat. The reception's fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
You always have a private dinner afterwards, which I had a good fortune of being a part of in New Orleans one time.
I think we went to the kitchen.
Yeah, at the Crescent Court Hotel.
Was it the Crescent Court
Or
the Windsor Court?
Windsor Court Hotel.
And we had the then senior guy who's got several techs out. Down in the kitchen, there must have been 12 of us at the table. Yeah, that was a great dinner.
I know McDevitt's, Bolger, me, you.
Brennan, Mike Brennan.
Mike was there, and also Schwab.
Yeah.
And some spouses. But it was, I still remember, you and Mike are the wine people, but I don't drink, and it was I think you or somebody said, yeah, Bill would probably like Moog and David, but certainly that would not be on your. But it was. I remember Mike telling me, Bill, you're going to be up pretty late, and I said, Mike, I wouldn't miss it for the world. So it was really, that was always
a joy for us to do
I
that.
still remember it. I still remember it. A number of years ago, you established the David S. Haskell, MD, Endowed Professorship in Orthopedic Surgery Education, and tremendous gesture. Can you tell me about your professorship and what inspired you to set that up?
Well, our focus and goal was to give back to the medical school, and specifically we were able to target the Department of Orthopedic Surgery. So we provided a chair for education for the residents in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery. We want to enhance their skills and make the best of the brightest and best kids that are there anyway. And I'm pleased to report that over the last 3 years, the in-training exams for the young residents that were taking the tests through the Academy of Orthopedic Surgery has increased on average 22%.
Great.
Yeah. Well, my dad always used to say, go the extra mile. There's very little traffic there.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great quote.
Yeah.
So the weekend was good.
It was great.
We
had a great time. We came to the medical school.
Everyone like I always like the graduation part of it. A few people tend to doze a little bit, but what a great way to get the weekend started.
We had a visit out here at the medical school. Many of the guys had not been back here to see us. It was the old county grounds, Sergeant Hall, where we would sleep and leave the tie on the door if we were busy.
Yeah.
We met the medical students who took us on tours again. I was being a member of a board here for many years, so we got over here quite often.
Right.
But many of our guys had their eyes wide open to see the building progress we've had here. And the class sizes now are 230, 240 or so. And we were reminded that at our reunion, or at our graduation in 1967, we had a 50-year class there. And that class graduated in 1917. That's before CT scans, MRI scans, penicillin, insulin, antibiotics, penicillin all together, CPR. Things have changed in 50 years. In the interval since we were there in the last 50 years, the changes are coming faster, faster and faster. So you got to keep eye on the ball.
Well, it was. I have to say I talked with a number of the classmates just because I was there, and everyone had a good time. It's a great change to bring the class down here for the brunch so they can see the place when it's active, not in the evening when it's totally dead.
Right.
And how'd the dinner go at the
We had two dinners. We had a dinner at the Pfister Hotel, our own room, a great lot of camaraderie.
Friday night.
Yep. And on Saturday night, we went over to the Milwaukee Club at my choice, my recommendation, where we're a member there, and we had some great wines and terrific food. We had an open mic and a lot of smiles.
That's
it was a great weekend.
Oh, that's great. And we've talked about everything up till now. I mean, you have been truly an extremely active alumni volunteer. Again, leading your class of 67 reunions, all the alumni activities within the Department of Orthopedic Surgery, serving on the Alumni Association board, serving as president, your endowed professorship. You and Suzanne are Zeit fellows and more. Tell me why you felt it's been important to stay so active, literally from day one when you became an orthopedic surgeon.
Well, life, you earn money, you make a living by what you get. You get life by what you give. My folks taught me the style of throwing money back at things you enjoy. You have to know that we have to have an affinity for those things that we love. And I had an affinity for this school, its programs, its residency program. It's very easy. It's fun to lead. I enjoy it. I'm good at it.
You are?
Yeah. It's easy.
Yeah. And I still remember knowing how busy you are. I still remember the year that you were going to be the president of the Alumni Association. I thought kind of to myself privately, thought, he's so busy. But you know something? You accepted the challenge, and you were there anytime.
It was great.
We needed it. No, it was super.
You made it easy to work with.
Well,
as our executive secretary.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it. It highlighted my career, and I say this quite. I'm probably. I'll combine the two. Highlights of my career. I think all that traveling I did with Mike Bolger and working with all of you guys and meeting so many great physician alumni.
That's great.
Just tremendous. Now, you've been practicing or still practicing for over 50 years.
Oh, well, yeah.
Well, 43 years as an orthopedic surgeon,
Right.
but 50 years since you graduated.
That's correct,
So probably even during the residency, you probably were working with, I know for a fact, there have been a couple of alumni that said, I met Dave Haskell when he was like the senior resident, and he worked with me, a number of them.
Yeah.
And how have you seen medical education change in that 50-year span?
Well, we interviewed some of the students, didn't even require an interview, they volunteered. Number one, we had 3 ladies in our class of 96. The classes now, the last several years, are averaging about 50% ladies. That's a big change. The introduction of computers has changed the dissemination of information. Yeah. We would walk into a class with a pen and a pad of paper. We'd write everything down. I personally would go home and recopy the notes because you couldn't read them. and then amplify with textbooks. Now all the notes are publicly presented, sent out on the internet, so you can go to the class if you wish, class now if you don't choose to. And the class now is more designed to answer questions or create a discussion. The kids are more capable of working together now. The insistence of comradeship, I think, is higher rather than every man for himself when we were there. And when the kids come out, half of them are ladies, and they all seem to go into residency programs. We all went into residency programs, but we didn't have fellowships when we were there. Now they're going into fellowships, so they're 33 years old if you're right on schedule by the time you get out. And again, because the ladies oftentimes are married, have kids, it's a big deal in their life to start a practice, so they commonly will go out and work for a hospital. I say a large percentage of kids coming out now are working for hospitals in their own subspecialty. Working 1 day a week, 2 days a week, it's a big change, big difference. The kids right now are, it's so electronically important, and to be good with electronics to assist you in your education, not just the pen.
Right. That's a good answer, and I hear that a lot. And that's great, Dave. I'll tell you something. I really appreciate you taking the time from your really very busy schedule to join me. Thanks a lot.
You're entirely welcome. Carry on.